What's up, everyone? It's the Autistic Scyther here, and what if you were a gym leader? That being said, that's been the question I've basically answered in this series thus far. 3 in particular. Those focusing on the ghost type, the fighting type, and of course the steel type. That being said, makes you wonder, what about if I was a gym leader of one of the starter types? Well, what better way to start this than with something that would, heat things up, if you pardon the pun. The fire type. Now, naturally, when you think about it, considering how each of the starter types have had their own thing, they've all been kinda interesting. In fact, when you think about it, water type has been the only one that has ever had like a late game, has been one of the few who has ever had like a late game gym and Elite Four type. Same with fire type, but more often than not, when it comes down to it, the starter types have always either been early game or mid game. Fire, more often than not, has been mid-game, naturally because they were more somewhat easier to figure out. Especially when you consider the likes of Flannery and Hoenn, or Kabu and Galler, or arguably enough, even Kiawe as a trial captain in Alola. But even with that, and more often than not, we've had a few famous, or in one instance, infamous members of the Elite Four, for the most part. Fire has always been relegated as an Elite Four type, as unlike water and grass, we've had 3 fire type Elite Four members. Those being Malva in Kalos, Crispin at the Blueberry Academy, and infamously Flint in Sinnoh. And as we all know, Sinnoh is known to basically have 2 fire type lines available initially. So it's kind of weird to say the least. But that being said, what if I eventually became a fire type gym leader in a region? Well, let's take a look at that, shall we? Alright, first things first, let's talk about this gym is going to be the 8th gym, which naturally kind of brings it back, since the only time we've ever had like a late game fire type gym was like all the way back in Gen 1 with Blaine. So basically in this case, it might make sense here. And in this case, when you first come into the town, well, it's basically just your standard small town. The only problem is, there's no gym. So you basically decide to go around the town, asking many of the different townspeople where the gym is. And they basically tell you that they haven't had a gym. However, many of the townspeople will talk about rumors of a strange cave opening up on the outskirts of town. So, and they mention about trainers that have been on their gym challenges, basically coming to the town and eventually ending up at that cave to having their interests piqued by by the entrance of by the cave. And they've always come out from it wielding gym badges. So, basically, naturally, that piques your interest, and you head out to the cave yourself to see what everyone else is talking about. That being said, once you reach the cave on the outskirts of town, you enter in, and you discover a sort of tomb, dare I say it, like a ruin area or tomb. And of course the gym guy's like, "Hey, camp in the making. I'm surprised you were able to find this location. Most of the townspeople don't even..." Surprisingly enough, when we decided to open up the gym, when the gym leader wanted to open up the gym, he couldn't get the permission to open up in town, so he decided to basically open up on the outskirts of town. Surprisingly enough, it worked. However, that being said, it's gonna get dark as you go in, further in. Here, take this torch. And as such, with the torch in hand, you basically head throughout the ruins, basically searching through the maze of rooms just to find where the gym leader is. Now, naturally, when you think about it, it's kind of like those movies with old-timey ruins in it, like Raiders of the Lost Ark or The Mummy. The Brendan Fraser version, not the more newer ones. Of course, that being said, many of those tombs are kind of interesting, as many of these tombs include different rooms that either result in a dead end. Of course, that being said, some of them will include trainers in there. And naturally, they're going to be like your standard trainers that are interested in this sort of thing, like ruin maniacs, super nerds, and burglars. And of course, all of them basically have different... However, many of them utilize different fire-type Pokemon. And here's the thing. Many of them are going to be based on the story of the mythical Salamander, which is one of the 4 notable elemental spirits, like Undine for water, Sylph for wind, Gnome or Titan for earth, and being the other 3. And of course, Salamander was basically in the early human history. The salamander became linked with fire when people ended up lighting a log on fire, only to find the salamanders hidden inside, scurrying out for safety, thus causing the people that did so to essentially believe that that the salamanders became born from fire. And that being said, many of them are just kind of reptilian Pokemon. So basically, you're going to have Pokemon like Charmeleon, Boykoko, Salandit, Turtonator, I guess when you think about it, Torkoal, Larvesta, even though Larvesta is not exactly a reptile, when you consider Slitherwing when you consider the fact that Slitherwing exists, yeah, it has a bit of reptilian bent to it. You got Numel, Camerupt, both desert Pokemon, not reptilians. Magmar, which is based on the Garuda. And oddly enough, you have trainers with Skeledirge and Charizard, which really kind of fits to the theming. That being said, you search throughout the halls of the ruins, and you eventually come to an area, come to a room where where you see a golden sarcophagus on a pedestal. As you edge closer, you hear raucous laughter, and you see the sarcophagus open, and stepping out from it is me, the gym leader. And as which, I look at you and I say, "So, you came! I'm impressed at your wanderlust. Most people give up since my gym's not in town, but it's always a surprise when someone's passion for exploration matches my own. Now, enough talk. Your final challenge is upon you. Let's battle!" And battle we shall, as I start off with my first Pokemon, a level 46 Torkoal. Now, this one's kind of obvious, but the fact I'm sending out Torkoal is because of its drought ability, which means fire type moves are going to become stronger. And not only that, but it also has some pretty other solid moves, including setting up Stealth Rocks to deal damage to any of your Pokemon that come in, Curse to lower its speed, but raising its attack and defense, Flamethrower for that solid fire type stab, and of course, Body Press, which does more damage the more based on its defense. But you defeat Torkoal somehow, and as such, I send out my second Pokemon, a level 44 Coalossal. Yeah, honestly, this one is going to be even more interesting, as you possibly brought in a water type to possibly counter Torkoal. So, yeah, you possibly have that. Well, Coalossal's ability, Steam Engine, turns its weakness into a strength, as when it's hit by a water type move, it raises its speed and attack to the max. Not only that, but it also has access to Tar Shot, which can basically make your Pokemon, specifically your water Pokemon, weak to fire types, as well as several other powerful moves. Ancient Power for rock type stab, Scald to deal water type damage and to possibly inflict burn on your opponent, and of course, Body Press to basically do damage based on its defense. Of course, if you're able to defeat it somehow, then I'll send out my third Pokemon, Salazzle, which is at level 47 with the ability Corrosion, meaning it's able to poison your steel types. Of course, that being said, you're not going to have a steel type, but either way, Salazzle is dangerous nonetheless, as in this case, it has access to the move Toxic, which can completely and horrendously poison your Pokemon, and Venoshock to deal double damage to it once that poison is set in. However, it also has the move Fire Lash for fire type stab, and basically to lower your attack stat. And of course, the move Temper Flare, because if for whatever reason one of Salazzle's moves miss, Temper Flare will deal double damage. Of course, once you defeat it, I'll say, I've never been backed up against a wall before, but I can handle this. Come, face the dragon's wrath! And I send out, as my ace Pokemon, a level 50 Salamence that I will terrestrialize into a fire type. If you already hadn't guessed, not only is it fitting the more reptilian aspect, but Salamence is a dragon. And I think whenever anyone thinks of dragons, they think of them breathing fire. Yeah. Basically a reference to the fire-breathing dragon trope. And not only that, it also comes packing Intimidate, which will lower your attack stat. Additionally, it also has access to a lot of other moves, including Dragon Claw, and both Dragon Claw and Fly for stab, Roost to basically heal itself up, and of course, Temper Flare to deal double damage whenever one of its other moves misses. Of course, it's gonna be one of the more difficult battles you've ever faced off against, but you somehow defeat it. And of course, once you and win the battle, and once you win, I reply, well done! I knew you were something. As soon as you reached the chamber. As soon as you reach this chamber. Well, since the flames of experience have been ignited, you deserve this badge. And take this team. And of course, with that, I give you the Brazier badge. Which, for those that don't know, a brazier is basically another word for a torch when you think about it. And not only that, I say, and take this TM as well. It should serve you in the Elite Four. And of course, I give you the TM for Temper Flare. And with that, I send you on your way saying, good luck, and send the Elite Four my regards. That being said, that's my fire type gym. It was kind of an interesting one when you think about it, since fire is that, well, fire, like steel, is one of those that kind of differ between each user. But when you think about it, kind of makes sense when you think of it. There's so much that could be done with fire type that I couldn't really decide. But, yeah. Things are, if we get to the next gym leader one, things are gonna be a lot more mellow, to say the least. Being said, like, comment, subscribe, and of course, you don't have to right away, but join my Patreon at patreon.com/theautisticscyther. Granted, every little bit helps, but I don't want anyone going broke for my videos. And that being said, I'll see you next time.